I want to thank the chairman. I've got a couple of chairmen to thank tonight, but Reverend Gibbons, I've lost where you are, Reverend. Where are you? Thank you for inviting me. Thank you very much for having me here tonight. I'm humbled by that. I also want to, I know everyone's already been acknowledged, but I got to repeat the other chairman, the chairman of the Passaic County Party and the state party, and a guy who's given me extraordinary advice. People cry when I speak all the time. Who could blame it? Chairman John Curry. Let's start off with Chairman Curry. To all the elected officials here tonight, I salute you by acclamation, as they say. I'm honored to be among you. I was particularly struck by Congressman Pascrell's remarks, as usual. I heard him speak last night and again tonight. And Congressman, each time you do, it's moving. So I appreciate what you said on all you do, year in and year out, day in and day out, on behalf of all of us. A couple other persons I want to just acknowledge again by acclamation, all the elected officials and chairs and others here tonight, the VIPs as it were. There are 4 candidates on the county-wide ballot in Passaic County on November 8th, and we'll talk about November 8th in a second. And I want to make sure that we acknowledge the 4 of them who are out there doing incredible work day in and day out as we lead up to the election 2 weeks from Tuesday. Freeholders Terry Duffy and Pat Lepore. Yeah. Sheriff Richard Burdick, right to my left, Sheriff. And Surrogate Judge Bernice Toledo. I lost her Bernice. You really set the mark, and Congressman Pascrell is obviously on the ballot on November 8th as well. So let's hear it for Congressman again. So to each and every one of you, whether you're on the ballot on November 8th or whether you're elected and not on the ballot on the 8th, you deserve our enormous admiration. I also want to say congratulations to the awardees tonight. An incredible group, and I know actually now, the Reverend, I know each and every one of you. So just again, Freeholder TJ Best, a good friend who's given me great advice. Tony DeNova, I still do call you the Ryan Seacrest of Passaic County, which is highest praise for me, my friend. Reverend Hector Seda, who I just had the opportunity to meet. Reverend Kenneth Clayton is an old friend. And then Councilman Andre Sayag and Councilman Shahid Khalid. So to all 6 awardees. I want to spend a minute on our state, but I want to put that to the side for a second, if I may. I want to reiterate the call to arms that we have on this November 8th. And putting aside the candidates we just discussed, who deserve our support, and many other local candidates and candidates around this state, including, by the way, the opportunity to win a congressional seat back from the other side, which is a sliver in Passaic County. So if any of you are here from the 5th Congressional District, that's a big one for us. It's a big one not just in Passaic County and New Jersey, but also nationally to get Scott Garrett out and Josh Gottheimer in. That's a big one. And that feels, I don't know, Chairman, if you see it there, that feels like it's really within our grasp right now.
Yes, it is.
That one is gettable. So whatever any of us can do to contribute to the odds of winning that seat, I think it's literally one of these elections that could be right on the knife's edge. So it could be a matter of a few votes, one way or the other. So beyond all of those important races, the race for the presidency presents itself as stark a choice as arguably we've ever had in our country. I believe it's not been since 1860 when the Confederates questioned President Lincoln's legitimacy in the process of his election as president. And that's a country that was on the verge of civil war, literally. And God willing, we're not there. But the choice, and I think we all know it, I'll bet you we're in violent agreement, but the choice could not be more stark between the future that Donald Trump presents and the future that Hillary Clinton presents. I am deeply, and by the way, Hillary Clinton is someone I've known since she was the First Lady of Arkansas. This is a woman who I've worked for closely as the United States Ambassador in Germany in her capacity as the Secretary of State of the United States. She's, by the way, nothing, and Chairman Curry knows this, she's nothing like the portrayals that people make of her. You know, everybody feels like they know her. The fact of the matter is the folks who claim to know her in many cases actually don't know her. In particular, the profile you read and see in the media regularly about her. I'm incredibly comforted by the fact that she is and will be a leader who continues so much of what President Obama has accomplished and stood for. I mean, I don't know if it strikes you with the same sense of emotion, but to see President Obama yesterday in Florida laying it all out for Hillary Clinton as if he were laying it out for himself, or Michelle Obama in Arizona laying it out for Hillary Clinton as if she were laying it out for herself. You never know. I don't know about you. I'm biased because I worked for President Obama as an ambassador. I'm a huge believer that history will be very, very, very kind to this president. But I'm really comforted by that intimacy of the relationship that they have. And that a Hillary Clinton presidency will extend a lot of the things that President Obama has stood for. Now, one other, so it brings me to the election itself, and I would just make two other comments about this before we turn maybe for a few minutes to New Jersey. One comment is that I'm fearful. Listen, if Donald Trump, Chairman, can't figure out the Al Smith dinner, that this is a night of levity and sort of self-parody, you talk about not reading a room right. I don't know if you've seen some of the tapes from last night, but it's not pretty. The poor Cardinal. That's the seat that I'll tell you that's the seat that you had to work to be in that seat, I'll tell you. But I am concerned, and I'm fearful, frankly. I hope not like 1860, that even in defeat, Donald Trump will continue to attempt to divide us. And unfortunately, it's probably the low 40% of the electorate and maybe low 30% of the adult population of the country, maybe even the mid-30s, who will believe him. They will believe his version of the events, his version of America, what it should look like, how it should function, that he was robbed. And so that's one outstanding, pregnant concern that we should all have. And we know what he stands for and who he parodies and how he caricatures our society. And urban communities are at the top of the list of things that he does not understand. They're at the top of the list that he caricatures. Communities of color, recently arrived, immigrants, now women of all shapes and sizes. So this is someone who has an uncanny ability to go to the lowest common denominator and hurt people. So that leads to my second observation. I don't think it's sufficient that we beat him on November 8th. I think it's imperative that we beat him badly. So that this is beyond the shadow of any doubt who won this election. Which is why, by the way, I was thrilled to see Michelle Obama in Arizona. And I suspect she wasn't there on a whim. That the Clinton team thinks that Arizona is within reach. And perhaps even a Georgia is within reach. Or crazy things could happen in a place like Utah. And I'm not suggesting we can get all of them, but if we get some of them, and we make a definitive statement that enough is enough, he won't have a leg to stand on. And that's what we need. That's the result we need. There'll be one other implication from that, and that may well help us right here in New Jersey, right here in Passaic County. And that is it'll have big down ballot implications. It'll have big down ballot implications, Congressman, for the House, potentially, right?
Yes.
That could be within reach, something we wouldn't have expected 6 months ago. The Senate is clearly within reach. But getting down also to county races and mayors and councils and boards of ed, this could have a profound impact down the ballot. So that, I think, that's the challenge at hand. It isn't just that we get Hillary Clinton elected president of the United States, although that in and of itself is an extraordinary statement, but that we have a resounding victory across the board that delegitimizes Donald Trump once and for all and brings along on her coattails a whole raft of undercard, as they say, down ballot victories. That's what our objective ought to be on November 8th. A moment or two, and I don't want to keep you, a moment or two on New Jersey. In fact, as was stated, I am a proud Democrat and a candidate for governor of the great state of New Jersey. We announced our candidacy in the middle of May. As of tonight, I continue to be the only announced Democratic candidate for governor. My real reason for being here, thank you. My real reason for being here, Mr. Chairman, I want to ask you, is it possible to move the election up till Monday, in which case I will be your governor? That is my hope.
If Christie goes to jail.
Oh, my Lord. We don't have enough time to talk about Governor Chris, the gift that keeps on giving Christie. When your favorability is at 21%, you don't need many more people outside of your friends and neighbors to get to 21. So he doesn't have a whole lot left backing him up. What I'd like to spend my minute on, if I may, and I'm honored to be able to spend that minute with you, is why are we pursuing this? It's one thing to say that we've had a great few weeks, and goodness knows we have. I'm humbled as I stand here tonight to have been endorsed by 12 counties in this state, and very notably Passaic County, Mr. Chairman. I received an endorsement this afternoon from the Carpenters. That's the 6th labor organization, both public sector and trades, that I've been endorsed by over the past several weeks. I'm humbled by that as well, believe me. But I will also say this. I woke up today, just as I will wake up tomorrow, taking nothing for granted. We're going to earn this thing one vote at a time. We're going to continue to go to the streets, present our case, introduce myself, and most importantly, I'm a Murphy. This is hard. Listen and hear what's on people's minds. So we take nothing for granted, although we are humbled beyond words and thankful beyond words for the endorsements that we've received. And we don't take them for granted. So I've been asked, why are you doing this? What can you present to us that fleshes out, that fills in your candidacy, such that we can understand why you're doing this? And I want to give you a couple of thoughts in that respect. Number one, as you walk out of here, I hope you think of me as someone who stands for the right things. You know, we're a state that used to stand quite comfortably for the right things until our governor hijacked what we stand for. So this is a governor who has cared about one constituent himself, who's tried to fit the narrative of New Jersey into a national conservative Republican narrative to compete in their national primaries. So he's taken money from women's health programs. He's vetoed countless common sense gun laws. He's had to be dragged, kicking and screaming to fund lead paint remediation. In a state, by the way, you know, Daniel Patrick Moynihan is the late senator from New York. You remember him?
Yes.
And Hillary Clinton has has co-opted one of his great lines, which I love. We're all entitled to our own opinion, but we're not entitled to our own facts. And on lead paint, it's a fact that 11 communities in 2 counties in the state have kids with have more kids with lead paint poisoning than does Flint, Michigan. So that's a reality. So let's accept the facts, including Paterson. Let's accept the facts, and then we can have our own opinion about what the right public policy is. But we have to start with the facts. This is a governor who's turned his back on the environment, a denier of climate change. He's a governor who presents a fairness formula to fund schools. Have you seen that?
Bad.
Which is extraordinarily divisive. So he has hijacked us. I want to present myself to you as somebody who stands for the things that we've always stood for in this state, at the sort of progressive soul, the progressive heartbeat, in many cases, of America. Someone who wants to put money back into women's health programs, who will sign those gun safety measures on day one. Someone who will not just be dragged along in lead paint remediation, but get out ahead of it. Someone who's going to put forward sensible solutions on how we get every single kid in the state educated to the fullest potential of the little boys and girls. So one thing, let's make sure we get back, and I want to be the guy that leads us there, back to standing for the things that we used to stand for, that are close to our heartbeat and our souls. Another, as you walk out of here, I'd like you to think about leadership. Again, Chris Christie, a divisive leader in the sort of Richard Nixon mold. Chairman, you'll remember the so-called Southern strategy?
Sure do.
Which is, I was going to say, thinly veiled racism, and that's a polite way to put it. But he pits, Chris Christie, as Nixon did, pits us against them. Whoever the us is, whoever the them is. Suburbs against urban all the time. People with money against those who are folks barely staying above the poverty line. In many cases, sadly, across racial lines, across gender lines. Please count me in the school of inclusive leadership. I'm born under the star. Although like so many, I look at Senator Poe up here. There are so many examples of this. There are so many people in this room who are born under that same star. Where we try to find common ground. Does it mean that we're always going to agree? Of course not. That's never going to be the case. But it does mean we can continue to find common ground. That we can disagree respectfully. I'm a big sports fan. Let's have it out in the locker room and not in the newspaper. One of my heroes growing up was Bobby Kennedy. And I thought, this is an extraordinary guy. He was able to find common ground just as easily with white coal miners in eastern Kentucky as with Cesar Chavez and migrant workers in California, as with African Americans to whom he broke the news that Martin Luther King was killed in Indianapolis on the night of his death. And he found common ground that night in an extraordinary American moment by saying for the first and only time in his life, my brother too was killed by a white man. Just extraordinary stuff. So again, count me, please, throw me in that category of inclusive leadership. Another thing I'd like you to think about as we walk out of here and as we turn the page on November 9th, and we're not going to turn that page until November 9th, we take nothing for granted until then, is that unless we get the economy right, we don't get New Jersey right. And in so many respects, Paterson is relevant in so many levels, and this is one of the great examples. That getting that economy right begins with getting the big urban centers' economies right. And by the way, we need to do two things in our economy, folks. We have to grow it again. It's flat as a pancake right now. And we have to make it fair again. Right now, it's flat as a pancake and profoundly unfair. We got to get it going again. And again, I think it's on the back of what we used to own, that STEM economy, the innovation economy. We were Silicon Valley before there was a Silicon Valley. and also the infrastructure economy. And you look at Paterson, you look at the trend right now in America, never mind just in New Jersey. It's a trend toward urban environments. For the economic centers, particularly in that edgy, innovative STEM economy stuff, the startups, it's where millennials want to live. It's where there's enormous investment. And by the way, let's make sure when that brighter future happens, and it will, that for the folks who fought and stayed, it continues to be good for them, not just for the folks who are coming. Amen to that, right? We won't succeed in this state if all the bigger urban centers are so-called gentrified and folks who stayed and fought to stay get pushed out. That's not the definition of success. But I think in a community like Paterson, which is so rich in tradition and so filled with talent, we can actually have it both ways. I really believe that. There's enough to go around. So we got to grow the economy, and we got to make it fairer, and a big piece of that is how the urban communities go. And I'm a big bull on that. And lastly, what I think we need in this state is leadership, the way I put it, that makes decisions at every turn based on what's best for the next generation in this state, not what's best for his next election. Enough already. Enough of the kicking the can down the road. You know, I talk about a governor who has our back. I want you to judge me in action, not in words. You know, I want to submit to you that we need leadership that you can trust. That you can trust even, as they say, when the lights are out and nobody's looking. Right? We may not always agree, folks. We won't. But let's get leadership again, like so many in this room, beginning with the chairman. The right people going into government for the right reasons, trying to do the right things. That's what we need above all in the state. No backstory, no hidden agenda, just going into it authentic, transparent, trying to do the right things. That's what I am, with humility, present myself as. I want to be in that category. There are many of you in this room who are already in that category, and I want to emulate your leadership. I have to say I'm a big optimist about this state. And I think, Chairman, you and I have talked about this. Can we imagine the following? Hillary Clinton as president and a Democratic governor, I hope me, by the way, I'll say that out loud, as governor of the state of New Jersey, because we only have so much money to go around in this state. This is a budget of $35 billion statewide at the state level. I'll bet you we probably need 45 or 50 billion. And with the right leadership, we'll get there because we got to grow that economy, but we're not going to get there by 2018 or 19. So we need to be able to find support outside of the box. And outside of the box, there's no better place to look than the federal government. So you're looking at the big infrastructure projects. The next generation bridge, rail, tunnel connecting us to New York City. Light rail investments. The whole range of potential money available in education dollars, TJ, right? The race to the top money that Chris Christie's turned his back on because it didn't fit his profile. Sandy aid that we've submitted inferior proposals to the federal government, and we've gotten back what you get when you have an inferior proposal. So there's a real chance to turn all of that on its head. And again, with a Democratic president and a Democratic governor, particularly with this Democratic president, we've got an enormous opportunity. I'm going to submit to you that given the weakness of our economic performance and Governor Christie's agenda to turn his back on Washington, that New Jersey will be the single best, biggest beneficiary of a Hillary Clinton presidency. I think there's a lot to be said to support that objectively. That this is not just a pie in the sky assessment. That we have only one way to go, and we'll get there. Again, it will be on the back of the big urban centers. And again, no matter how good the local leadership is, you need a governor who's a partner. You need a governor who can work with you, not against you. A governor who cares about you. Getting the education thing right in Paterson matters a lot to me personally. I submit that to you. Helping to get public safety in the right place. Helping to try to find creative ways to ignite the economy in the very best way it can. Finding the infrastructure projects that do good and do well. Working, importantly, I'm looking at Reverend Clayton in front of me, my friend. Working and knowing, as I know from my membership on the board of the NAACP nationally, knowing that institutions of faith are critical participants in any success in any community like this, and working with them. I'll conclude by saying again that I'm an optimist. We have enormous potential. One way I think about it is this. If this state were in the state it was in at the moment, and we had tried objectively everything under the sun to grow the economy, to invest in the urban communities, that we had real leadership that cared about governing, and we were still stuck in the mud, I don't know that I have the courage to stand up here before you and run for governor. The reality is the exact opposite. The list of what we have not even tried at the leadership level in the state is up and down your arm. Some of it costs money. I'm not going to lie to you. We're going to have a couple of rough years to get this state back to where it needs to, given what this guy's going to leave us with. But a lot of it actually doesn't. A lot of it's just common sense. And so, because that list is so long, at one level it's why we are where we are, and we should bemoan that. On another level, it's the playbook for what we have to do to get to where we know we can be. And when I say to get to know where we can be, I want to leave you with this. And again, maybe this is more relevant on November 8th. Donald Trump and his like would like to lead us back to their version of some nirvana past. Something, I don't know, I haven't figured out, maybe something circa 1955, right? And that's their version of the good old days. I don't recall any board level discussions at the NAACP that look back to 1955 as the good old days. So it's important when we define success on things like the economy, we not only have to grow the pie, we got to make sure everybody gets a slice of the pie. Right? And that success in a more subjective way is not going back to something we had, although I'd like to go back to when we were a AAA rated state. There are a few things in the past that I'd like to have today. But it is going to a place where we have never been before. And that's the sort of leadership and vision I submit to you that we need right now in this state and, frankly, in this country. God bless you all, and thank you very much for listening.